Hey, I'm Nick Bombrack, and this is the Record Podcast. Thanks for coming back to check out another episode. This week, I have a very special guest, and I know all my guests are very special, but this one is especially close to my heart. It is one of my very longtime best friends, Matt Scheck. He is someone that I go back with to 5th grade. Starting there, we've been in bands together. We've shared music with each other. We've just kind of always been around in each other's lives, and he was actually the best man at my wedding. So, we go back as far back as I think any guest and I will go. But he's on today to talk about a couple different things. He was in the band Flowers for Dorian. He was also in some metal bands that we'll get into. And he runs and owns the company Slapbass Creations, which is a clothing art company that does really awesome out-of-the-box stuff that you should go check out. So if you go to slapbasscreations.com, or if you go to Etsy and search Slapbass Creations, you'll see all the crazy stuff he's got up there. Go and support him. He does really awesome stuff, and it's a local company, and you gotta support your local companies, right? So go out and get a cool t-shirt or a pin or something sweet. But we talk about a lot. We talk about both those things. We talk about Flowers for Dorian, Slapbass Creations, all the bands before that, the band that we started in together, just our overall history, metal, his love of metal music, band rivalries, battles of the bands, battle of the bandses. We get into how those are a crazy ripoff. MTV, Red Bull, a bunch of cool stuff that Flowers got into, and how I was involved in all that, and a bunch more. It's a good long interview, and we get into a lot. And it's actually the first in-person interview I've ever done, and it was cool. It was really fun to do. I hope I can do more of those in the future. And although I was only able to do it with one microphone, I think it doesn't sound too terrible. I'm sure someone will disagree with that, but yeah, I got it to sound actually not so bad. And in honor of my guest this week, we're doing a sweet little giveaway. So Matt's been kind enough to chuck up a few things for a giveaway. So if you go on Twitter, Facebook, any social media, make a post about the Record Podcast and Slapbass Creations, do something that's cool and unique, promoting both of those things, or at least Slapbass Creations, but just tag me in it so I see it. He has given away Flowers for Dorian CD and some Slapbass swag, so you'll get a nice little care package sent your way if you just do one of those things. Post on social media, tag the Record Podcast, promote Slapbass Creations, and you will get a nice little care package that I'll announce the winner of next week's episode. And that's really just it. I got a good long email last night from my buddy Quinn Curran, who I go back with a long ways. He was the drummer of Rule 22, and he listened to some of the podcasts and gave me some notes on it. And I think the one thing that stood out to me mainly is more context, and I definitely think that's a good note. It's something that I'm going to work on more, just kind of briefing everyone on who these people are, what these stories even mean. If you're it's easy for me to get lost in it because I know all the info for it, but if someone else is listening who doesn't know these bands or these stories, I'm going to definitely try to dive in more and give some more context around them. But regarding this episode, yeah, so this is one I'm trying to tee up a little bit more. So again, this is my buddy Matt Scheck, one of my longtime best friends. We played a million shows together. I've known him since 5th grade. He's a dude I've known a long time. We get into a lot of good depth into this interview. So inadvertently, I took the notes without even knowing that they were there. But thanks, Quinn, for the notes. Appreciate it, man. And let's just get into this podcast. Let's do it. Well, how about we do it? How about we get into the podcast and we just do it? No, but seriously, thank you for checking out the podcast. And I'm going to work on getting this thing better for future ones. I've got some really good interviews coming up with some sweet guests that aren't just musicians. They're all over the music world. So yeah, let's start off with this one. I'll see you next week with a winner for the podcast giveaway, whatever. I'm just babbling. Go.
So are we who we've become, 'cause heaven needs what you
So what's great about this is that not only is my first foray into GarageBand recording podcast style, it's not only the first time getting two people on one mic, but it's the first time having a person in person with me talking. Person.
I'm a person.
You are a person.
What's
And
a person?
what is your name, person?
I'm Matt Sheck.
And Matt Sheck, you are my good, very long time best friend who played in the band Flowers for Dorian and also owns and runs his own clothing and art company called Slap Ass Creations, for those of you who don't know. And for those of you who don't know, you need to go check it out. SlapAssCreations.com
Yeah.
and Facebook.
Yep. Or Etsy.
Yeah.
Just like if you type in Slap Ass Creations.
Yeah.
I usually am putting people more towards that rather than the website because the website's just been garbage.
Right.
And
Yeah. Which we're working on.
Yes.
But I was thinking actually earlier today, I was like, not only is this funny for the reason of us being in the same room and just me trying to sort that out technically,
Yeah.
but it's the first interview where I will have known somebody so long that I don't even know what questions to ask. 'Cause I already know all the answers to the questions, but I did randomly think of something earlier, which I did know the answer to, which was, do you remember the first time we met? Because I don't have like a recollection of that.
The first time that we met
Or
was,
what is your first memory of us meeting?
first memory of me meeting you was 5th grade, Cotton Creek, wall ball court.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know what wall ball is, it's essentially you get, at least two people, if not more. You get a ball in between you and you kind of huck it against the wall. And anybody who, if you hit the ground before it hits the wall, that person needs to run to the wall and touch it before somebody else grabs the ball and throws it at the wall. If that person hits the wall with the ball before you get there, then you have to stand against the wall and get chucked and get a ball chucked at you.
Yep.
So and since we were the first year of students in this school, they didn't have any playground stuff. So that was like the sport that we played for a while.
Yeah, but there's like part of me that feels like I've met you before that.
And that's what I was trying to think. In my mind, I was like, well, I can probably just kind of come up with something that was like, 5th grade. We probably just met. But I was like, I wonder if he remembers like a specific instance, because I don't.
No.
5th grade's too long ago. But the only reason I asked is because my memory is absolute shit. But Adam remembers specifically the moment we met, which was like in 4th grade or something. And I have no recollection at all. It was something of like, he sat at my desk. And I walked up to him and said, like, "Oh, you're sitting at my desk." And he's like, "Oh," and he remembers it clearly. I'm like, "How do you remember that?"
I remember being in Wakanda for 4th grade at the middle school, or the grade school,
yeah.
And then Cotton Creek was made, and then we all went to school there, And then that was just like, and then everybody that went to Cotton Creek going into junior high was just like, oh, reunited.
Yeah,
and like, oh my gosh, what happened to you last year?
Yeah, because of those of us who lived in. Most of this is bullshit. It doesn't even matter. But it was the weird set of circumstances. My family moved to Island Lake and then ended up at Cotton Creek, and then that's at some point in that year, you and I met. And I was trying to think earlier. I was like, I do not remember the moment we met, but I remember meeting in 5th grade, and then just
I think
bands.
that's really when our friendship started, was 5th grade.
Yeah.
Was when we started hanging out like all the time.
Right.
Having sleepovers all the time.
Yeah.
And then we essentially started playing music all the time.
Well, and what's funny too is like even then slap ass was a thing. Like you'd already had that kind of forged like in your mind as like a thing you wanted to do. And even if it wasn't called slap ass at the time, very early on you had slap ass as a thing.
I don't even remember how that even started, and I think that was a correlation of both of us coming together.
Yeah.
And using that for like stupid movies,
right?
And like Slap Ass Productions presents before any one of our like stop go animation movies.
Yeah. It's too weird to think about now because I'll run into people who will just say like, oh, I've known my friend for like 10 years and they've for a long time. I'm like, Well, let's see. my best friend and I, we go back to 5th grade, and let's see, you're 10 years old then, and we're 30, so I've known for 20 years. Yeah. It's just weird to, like, once you start to sort out the numbers in your head. But, and then at some point we end up playing in band. Like, I know the very first incarnation is the talent show playing in 6th grade.
Papa Spanky's Symphony Orchestra, and then we changed it, like, the second before we went on stage, and that was like Fallout or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And we just played Jammin' by Bob Marley, but no singer.
Yep.
And I remember, like, the whole auditorium was like clapping with it, and it was like super. I just remember being super excited about it. And then we didn't even win. They didn't even place. Nothing. I remember they announced the winners over the loudspeaker, and I was like, oh, they didn't say our name for 3rd. They didn't say our name for 2nd. And then nothing. And, like, my heart just dropped into my stomach.
Well, I almost thought for certain we were going to win. Just because all of our friends were like, yeah, gosh. And we played 2 shows that day. Yeah.
And that was the first time I had both ever, I mean, I assume you had ever been on a stage before and played.
Never.
In front
never,
of,
ever.
And really, it all started for me playing drums because my dad and stepmom Tracy decided to buy a bunch of music gear, and so then there was drums and keyboards and guitar, and so then I was like, well, I'll just start playing the drums, and then we started having sleepovers there where you'd play guitar and I'd play drums, and then do you even remember the beginning? So the first band we were in was Above Suspicion, and I don't even, that's like foggy to me how that even all started.
Well, you and Jim and Mike were already playing, and everybody knew I could play the guitar.
Okay.
And I remember being like, oh, I want to come try out for the band, and I thought, all right, cool, I'm going to be in a band.
Yeah.
Tried out, and, like, I think immediately after the first song, Jim's like, you're in the band. And I'm like, all right,
and awesome. That was probably, like, what, 8th grade? Because I think freshman year was like when it was a band, but 8th grade probably when we were putting it together or sometime around
No. Freshman year is when you guys were playing together. And sophomore year, I came in, heard you guys were playing because you guys have been playing, and then I was like, oh, okay, awesome. I'm going to join their band because they're all my friends, and they're going to be like, okay, he can play the guitar, so you're in the band. And that's pretty much what happened.
And that was our version of a pop punk band that was just kind of just 4 kids listening to, like, a bunch of Blink-182 and then mix in, like, I remember Mike was into Rancid at the time a lot, and I remember listening to, like, a lot of Propagandhi and Lagwagon, a lot of Fat Records. I remember listening to a lot of Fat Records comes with you at your house.
Face to Face was a big one.
Yeah.
Face to Face, Rancid, Propagandhi, No Facts was like huge thing. I remember being in like 5th grade and being like showing a bunch of people. I'm like, hey, dude, check out No Facts, and people are like, what, punk rock? And I'm like, check this out.
Well, you especially. I mean, I had no idea what the Misfits was, and then you showed me what the hell that was. So that was like completely eye opening. Like I never got huge into Misfits, but you showing me it was like, oh, I don't even know what this is at all.
Yeah.
And anytime now I think of or hear Misfits, it's immediately directly related to you. That's like a huge memory there.
Oh, the Misfits. The Misfits and Danzig.
Are you? I haven't even asked you this yet. Are you going to see the Misfits at Riot Fest this year?
Man, I really want to go see the Misfits. Not only do I want to see the Misfits, but Rob Zombie is doing the whole Astro Creep 2000 in its entirety, that album, and I'm like, I was more excited about that than actually seeing Danzig rejoin the Misfits, if you're a Misfits fan and you're a Danzig fan, that's like the world ending, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, but I'm like, no.
Rob
Zombie's doing Astro Creep 2000, and that's kind of awesome.
Yeah. So are you going to try to make it out to Riot Fest to see either of those?
I don't know. I mean, the tickets were ridiculous, and I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good bands, and I didn't get my tickets yet, so that pretty much means no.
I hear you. Same here. So Above Suspicion was like the first half of high school, freshman, sophomore year, and just playing constantly. I mean, I brought up multiple times in little bits talking about Island Lake Village Hall, but that was like that was it. That was like play shows there as much as possible.
That was the beginning of playing shows.
Yeah.
Was the Village Hall, and then the Just for Fun shows were even better.
Yeah.
Just because I thought that was like... The sound there was just garbage.
Right, no, you weren't there to play for sound.
You were there just to play,
Yeah.
and everybody that was around wanted to be a part of that
Yep.
scene.
Yep.
So you went to those shows, and
Yep.
I mean, even like when we weren't in bands and there was bands that we knew that were playing,
Right.
we went to those
Right,
just because
yeah.
it's like, yeah, you went, you had a good time. It's like everybody knew you could. If you weren't at the merch booth, you were outside
Yep.
hanging out with your friends, drinking beer, or
Yep.
just BSing with everybody
Yep.
because.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it didn't even matter. You didn't know who the lineup was. You just went. You're like, all right,
Yeah.
it's Friday. Let's just go to the Village
Yep.
Hall or the Wakanda Bowl for a minute there. And
Jeez, dude, the Village Hall with Milkman's Kid.
yeah,
And then like, remember, and then the Wakanda Bowl.
mm-hmm.
I think that was like
That was
after,
big for a minute.
Well, before I joined Above Suspicion, we had Worthless Diversion,
Oh, that's right.
and that was the first. Actually, that was the first real band that I
Yeah.
was in. That I like me, Josh Rohde, and Mike Czak.
Yep.
And I think Blake was in it.
Yep,
Blake
yep.
Edwards was in
Yep.
it for a little bit, but then we like kicked him out, or we did something.
Yeah.
And then like Kurt Kubachek,
Yep.
and eventually performed the show with us.
Yep. I do remember that. Yeah.
I remember that show very distinctly because that room was so small. I think like Fire Code was like
Yeah.
maybe 60 people, and they probably jammed like 150 to 200 people.
Yeah.
And that was like Hot Carl special.
Yeah.
Played that. Like we opened for Hot Carl, and then it was Milkman's Kid,
Yeah.
and then something else, and that's when like the ska punk thing was like huge.
Yep.
And I was never really into the ska part of
Right,
it, but
yeah.
I liked that they brought the fast part of punk into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And like none of those people really liked metal.
Yeah.
And I was and I'm
Yep.
still a huge metalhead, but like
Which we'll get into.
But like that was like I'm like, all right, well, whatever. This is what we're gonna play. We're gonna play punk, and I like punk, and
Yeah.
And at that time, I was like, well, all the punk band that these guys like is like pop,
Yeah.
like pop punk,
Yeah.
And essentially that's what like NoFX and even Rancid
Right.
is pop punk, but
Yeah.
Rancid was more raw and just
Right.
like they did it right
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
That's what NoFX was too.
Right. Yeah, and playing all those. I mean, the band was around for like 2 years, but we played a bunch just between all those venues and like a little bit in like Mundelein at that church there and like random
I forgot
other.
about that.
Yeah. I actually told I told Jen the story of that show the other day, which was we play this church, and I felt it was probably one of those shows where there's like 100 bands playing and are just like jammed in the middle of it somewhere. So I remember we played, and then afterwards there were still like bands playing for a while, and we were outside. It was me and Blake, and we were waiting for you. You were talking to some girls, and we were like sitting there waiting in the car, and Blake's like, "What's going on? Like, why are we waiting for him?" I'm like, I don't know. He's talking to some girls, and then.
Forgot about this story.
and then I was like, all right, let's just pull up to him and see. And so I think we were ahead, so we went in reverse and like backed up to him and like, Matt, what's going on? And he just kind of looked at us and smiled. And one of the girls, I was like, let's go, we're trying to leave. And one of the friends of the girl you were talking to is like, he's trying to get her number. And I was like, well, why would he do that when he has a girlfriend? And then they all just slowly turned to you. And then we just drove, like, we didn't drive away, we just pulled up, and Blake was like, had tears running down his face. We were laughing so hard. And you still got her number, it didn't even matter.
I just remember looking at her and being like, I don't have a girlfriend. Maybe. Listen.
It didn't matter. You had such game that it didn't even matter. But we just playing, just constantly playing between all the local, like, whatever towns in a whatever 10, 15 mile radius of all the Village Hall, Moose Lodge churches. Yeah. I just talked to Mikey Russell from 504 playing Wax on Ready that day. We were just talking about like how a band at that time, you could play like 6 to 8 shows a month and play to new people, like so many new people all the time, just because everyone kind of just went to their one place.
Yep.
So you could play Mundelein and then Wakanda, which aren't far apart, but like you'd still play to like 85% new people.
Who you just had somebody on your podcast? Oh, it was the drummer from Color Morale.
Yeah,
and
Steve.
you guys were talking about how being in that scene, like no one's gonna ever understand about like what being in that scene was, because it's like no one knew like how awesome and like every town you could play somewhere because everybody had like bands that wanted to do stuff, and there was a lot of good musicians that actually made it, or if they didn't make it, they were doing it for a while, they made it to a point. I mean, when I look at like being in a band and doing all that stuff, it's like, yeah, you did it because you toured. Yeah. You didn't have you toured on little money and you barely did it, but like you played a show every night, and that was what it was all about.
That was
playing,
the fun of it.
You know, all the other stuff was just BS.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, there's the business aspect of it.
No, you didn't
there's
think
all
about
this,
that
and it's just
time,
like,
no.
oh man, I just like playing live.
Yeah, that was like the little leagues of just doing it for the fun of it and just having the best time with your friends.
Yeah.
And so it was 2 years of that, and then towards the end, I meet Adam, and then we start talking about doing a band, and he introduced me to Ryan, and then so at some point I have a conversation with you, and I was like, well, dude, I'm gonna
I remember this distinctly.
Okay.
Because I when I listen to your podcast, and these little stories that come up, it's so funny because it's like you have this podcast, and I'm like, I've been there with you that whole time. So when that actually happened, that was like the end of Above Suspicion. Like you were doing this thing, Musket Arm.
Was I doing it at the same time? Like you
doing it for both? You were doing both, or you guys were jamming. And you were jamming at Adam's house.
Yeah.
And I remember Jim just being so upset. Like, just everybody was clashing. Like, it was mainly you and Jim that were clashing.
Yep.
And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, man, I just remember, I just want to play metal.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to play something heavy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm playing this punk stuff. We're playing these Blink-182 songs. Nothing against them. I just wanted to...
Yeah, it wasn't where your heart was.
Well, yeah, it wasn't where my heart was, and it wasn't challenging for me as a musician, as a guitar player. Like, growing up playing Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica, it's like, that was challenging to me, and I, like, learned how to play my instrument playing these songs that just shredded your face off. So I was like... And I remember just trying to write stuff like that, and I was like,
You could tell, too. Like, I just remember those hangouts and writing sessions, like, the songs that Jim would bring, the songs that you would bring. Like, you could tell, like, that you were going towards like the next phase, which was playing in heavier bands. Like your stuff you were writing, you were still trying to like write stuff that was sounding like what we were playing, but in a way that like, oh, he's going heavier. Like, and I loved it because you showed me a lot of metal, and I mean, I think we were all friends, so there was no ill will or anything, but like you and I especially, like you supported me going off to do that band. I supported you like playing heavy shit because you were really good at it, and I was like, this is what he's been wanting to do.
Like I just remember wanting to play like Drop D, like, all right, we're gonna play Drop D. I wrote this song Drop D, and it just like it never went anywhere, and I was like, and I had all these like handful of riffs and licks, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And I remember like, because I would play a lot with Brandon Hurley, and Brandon loved metal too, so it was like, all right, so I'd be writing this stuff, and I'm like, I just, I need to meet a guitar player that's gonna wanna just shred or just like do something like that. And I remember that band practice at Adam's house, and I remember you pulling me aside like we were ready to leave, and he's like, you're like, I really want to do this band, and I'm like, oh, thank God, because I think you really should, because Glassman's an awesome guitar player. Your music, like the songs are way better than what Above Suspicion was doing at the time, and it just sounded better, and I thought it was better for you to do, and I was like, just go do that, because that's awesome. I want to go play metal. And you're like, yeah. And we're both like, okay, cool. High fives, and then we like drove off, and I thought like, all right, well that's cool, because like the dynamic of the band was like, me and you were like really good buddies, so
Yeah.
it was like, and we grew up playing our our instruments together.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, this is what I want to play, and you're playing this. Yeah, we'll just go.
Yeah.
we'll just do what we're gonna do. And
Well, it's always been nice because we've always been like fans of each other's work, even if it was like, you know, not it wasn't like we were going to each other's shows all the time or anything.
Yeah.
It was just this like understood thing of like, how's your band doing? Awesome, that's great. Like we were both
Yeah.
like super interested and invested in each other's futures. So it was from that moment, like especially at that time, because Jim was really sore about me leaving. And me leaving and splitting up the band and stuff. So like, and I went through it again in Muskedarm with Ryan. So like, it wasn't the last time that this happened, but like at that point, it was that was a huge moment for me because I was like, well, I don't want to, like, this isn't just some group of guys that I just met. Like, these are my friends I've been friends with for a while, and I want to, like, bum them out by doing this. But so then I leave to go play in Muskedarm, and what is your next steps? Because I don't know if I actually know the little details of what happened for you after that.
The whole time that you were doing Muskedarm, I was just, I think I was just like noodling around on the guitar and like what I was doing at the time was just learning more chords, like fuller chords, weird chords, like, and this is before like the whole hardcore thing became huge. Like it was very underground, and I knew nothing of it at that time. Yeah, and then
before the opposite of December.
It was that was like opposite of December was out for Poison the Well, and I had no idea who Poison the Well was.
Gotcha.
So like what happened was you guys were doing you guys were doing Muskedarm, and I think I went to a show with Jim, and I went to go see, it was like the most random show. It was like and I didn't like screaming in metal. I was very 80s. Like, I loved guitar riffs and licks and all that stuff. So anytime I heard stuff, and that's when I met Ty. Yeah. Like, I knew Ty, and he was starting to show me like all this underground stuff, like early Under Oath, like when Dallas was still singing in the band, and it was like the Changing of Times album. And he was going to like all the doing all the Christian, because he was very much in the Christian scene, and he was going to Cornerstone and seeing all these bands, and I knew nothing of it, and he tried showing me stuff, and I was like, I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear it, because it just the screaming in it was just like, I'm like, oh, this is garbage, you know. So then I go to a show with Jim, and it was going into our it was like end of sophomore year, going into junior year, and it was Promise Ring, Rufio, Poison the Well, and Strung Out was...
That is a weird line.
Yeah, Strung Out was the band that we were going to see, and I'm like, I love Strung Out. They, you know, because they had like...
They were like heavier, an 80s metal punk band.
Yeah, they were like the good mix, and I was like, I can dig this. And then I remember we were up in the balcony at the Metro. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, who are these guys? Because I hear them tune, and they're just really heavy. I'm like, wow, these guys are in like drop C. Like I didn't even know. I'm like, man, these guys are heavier than D, and I like playing in D. Yeah. And I remember looking at Jim like, who are these guys? He's like, oh, it's Poison. They're one of those bands. Like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, literally. I'm like, and I look at him and I'm like, okay. All right, I can. All right. So then, and like, this is right when they just came out with Tear from the Red. Okay, yeah. And I'd never heard of them. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And all the bands, I was like, oh, Rufio. And everybody's like, yeah, Rufio. Oh, like, you know, and everybody liked them because they could shred. Right, and I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah. But all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, okay. And then they come out, and
what was Poison the Well in the lineup?
Were they were the main support.
Oh, okay.
So they were opening up for Strung Out. Okay. And after I saw them, it was rightfully so. Why? Yeah. If not, they should have headlined. Yeah. Because they just... I mean, that was the first time I saw clean-cut dudes, just like clean-cut dudes come out with like Jackson guitars or like, and just wielding them and like just throwing them. And I'm like, holy shit. And the guy comes out and, and I'm like, holy shit, these guys are awesome. Like they were heavy and they just like, I'd never heard anything like it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, after they got done playing, I was like, this is the best band. I just, oh my gosh. And then like Strung Out went on and their sound guys sucked. They were way too loud. And Poison Well had perfect sound.
Yeah.
They had a perfect volume. I was like, and I just remember leaving being like, Jim's like, yeah, they were pretty good. I'm like, they sucked, dude. Poison Well kicked fucking ass.
Yeah,
And I just remember them being like, oh, okay. Well, I'm like, no, they were good. And he's like, yeah, But that was
like
the moment that I remember being like, holy shit. And then immediately the next day I called, I was like, man, I want to be in a metal band. I've been wanting to be in a metal band.
Yeah.
I'm going to call Tyler Hall. And I was like, hey man, have you ever heard of Poison the Well? And he like looks at me and he goes, have I? Yeah, of course I've heard of Poison the Well. And all of a sudden, I pulled out all the CDs that he burned me and stuff. So like, all of a sudden, I'm pulling out like Zayo CDs, and I'm pulling out all my the Under Oath CD, and then like Extol, like all this crazy metal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this all just makes so much sense now because it's like you've been open and you see the light, and you're oh my gosh, this metal is awesome. And that changed everything. And then from that day on, we started playing music together. Like I remember sitting down, I was working at Island Foods.
Yep.
And Ty lived right behind the diner, right there, the Island Lake Cafe. And he would come and we would he'd pick me up or he'd meet me at the store. Mm-hmm. We'd go and we'd like smoke weed, and then we would go and play music. And I remember the first day that I go into his room, he's got a PV half stack and he's got this Dean guitar that has like a Jackson headstock on it, and it's got this crackle, like red crackle finish on it, and I'm like, oh, that guitar is the shit. And I'm like, man. So he starts playing, I'm like, yeah, and he starts playing some blues and stuff, and he starts playing some of the metal stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm like, well, let me see your guitar. And I just remember picking up the guitar and being like, just starting to play all these like anything off the Ozzy No More Tears album and like Metallica and Megadeth, and I'm just shredding along and then all of a sudden I look at him and he's laughing his ass off at me. I'm like, what is so funny? Like here I am thinking like, oh, this guy thinks I'm a joke that I'm playing this stuff, and he's like, and he's laughing so hard at me, and I'm like, what is going on? He's like, you're so fucking 80s, man. He's like, you just shred. I'm like, well, yeah, man. I mean, that's what I grew up playing. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, why? What? So like from that day on, we started writing stuff, and that's when we were in Behold the Pale Horse.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was gonna say Bleeding Session Sky. I forgot the first variation was Behold the Pale Horse.
Yeah, Behold the Pale Horse, and actually you just posted a thing.
The Musket Arm cover.
The Musket Arm cover of Behold This, because I know that there was always like this like weird animosity.
Which I don't even know why.
It was like a weird animosity.
Because our two bands, there's you and me, and there wouldn't have been between you and I. I remember
it was between Mark and Ty, and you guys, for some reason, just your sense of humor. Yeah. It's like, I remember meeting people that met all the guys in D-Man, and being like, oh, those guys are assholes. It's like... And I just remember being like, no, they're not assholes. You just don't get their fucking humor. You don't get them as people. Because, they're assholes to each other. But they're, like, totally harmless. And they're...
Well, funny enough, I do remember, and it was a thing of, like, Ryan was pretty jealous a couple times. I don't know if you remember this. So Behold the Pale Horse starts playing shows. And is Behold the Pale Horse... with Dan and Colin, and who's the lineup?
So, that first show, and I know what show you're talking about, is when we played that Arlington, or
Algonquin.
The Algonquin Roadhouse.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for you guys, because we were playing with all those, like, really shitty punk bands.
Yep.
And I only say that is because they were.
Yeah.
Like, And they were trying to do circle pits. They're like, all right, everybody, let's do circle pits. And it's just like, and I just remember standing there being like, these guys have no idea what circle pits are or what you guys are, and they were just trying to have fun.
Yeah.
But I just remember just being like that total douche guy being like, you guys don't even fucking know.
Yeah.
So then, I remember like we opened for you guys and no, I'm good. But I remember their PA went out or something went wrong to where you had to go and get your PA system.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And you guys went and got your PA.
Yeah.
And then we went on.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, you're going to go on.
And you guys fucking destroyed the place.
Yeah.
Like there was all these bands and people were like, yeah, that's fine. But then when you guys went, it was like mayhem. Like chairs getting thrown around and shit. Like it was like mayhem in there.
Well, you know what the funny thing is like there was no one like there.
Right.
There was like
it was a big room and not a lot of people.
It was massive and there was no one there. And then all of a sudden, like literally 15 minutes before we were supposed to go on, the whole town of Wakanda showed up.
Yeah.
Like all the kids, like from high school. She's like, oh, what's up? Yeah. I'm like, oh, great, you made it.
Yeah.
And then I remember you guys were like, oh, yeah, this is great. It was a great turnout. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So then I remember like we played like Nail My Eyes Shut.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have a singer at that time. We didn't
okay.
And we had like Matt Seaford, Ty's buddy, really good friend of all of us.
Yeah.
He came out and he did something where he did like a spoken thing and then I just remember it just like right before we went to like the crazy heavy parts because I remember everybody would come to our band practices and they knew our songs so it was like by the time they all knew and like that whole crowd split in half and they knew when the heavy part was coming and everybody's like going back and forth like pointing. I'm like, oh my gosh. Shit's gonna happen. And my parents were there. Everybody's parents were there. It's like, oh, Matt's playing a show. It's like they didn't even know what was gonna happen because I didn't know what was gonna happen. But then I remember that happened, and then the place got destroyed.
Yeah,
people were getting thrown through tables. My dad almost beat somebody up because someone bumped into my mom and didn't say they were sorry.
Yeah. It was
somebody was on drugs. Someone got arrested for drugs outside, and I just remember being like, "Holy shit, we're gonna go back to school." But then they shut the show down.
Yep.
And you guys didn't even get to play.
Yep.
And I remember there was animosity because of that.
So I think that's what started it, and it was never a thing with me and you guys because I knew you and loved you, and so there was no thing. But it was Ryan being because he was very much like the head of Musket Arm. It was like a lot of his songwriting and stuff, and that I think that might have been the show that kicked it off, and because of that, also what came with it was like you guys. I think Ryan and us had an ego about like, oh, we're doing well, so like we're playing these songs well, so we should get this following. But then you guys came out the gate and just like obliterated everything, and every show you guys played was just everyone. It wasn't people standing enjoying it and like a little bit of mosh pit. It was like people were losing their minds, like actually going insane. So I think in Ryan's mind and in our minds, it was like, oh, that's what we thought was going to happen for us.
Yeah,
but and I think. It was very much more so for Ryan because for me, I was like, oh, I'm watching and I'm like, they're awesome. They're ripped. They're doing perfectly at their songs. And Matt's in the band. Like, I love all this. But I think for him, it was a big ego kick because that was what he had kind of hoped for his band. But yeah, then since then there was that. And then so then we put out that EP and for whatever reason, that was the artwork he decided to do, which was a white horse on the cover. And it was called Behold This. And I remember at the time being like, I don't know about doing this, and I was like, oh, but whatever, it's goofy and stupid, but then it created even more animosity, and it was so stupid, like such stupid like high school shit, but it did create a lot of weird silliness, but from Behold the Pale Horse starting as instrumental band, what happens from that to like Beneath This Ashen Sky and getting a single? Like, what do you remember? Like, how?
Well, I remember we changed the name to Dorian Gray.
Oh yeah,
we changed it to Dorian Gray, and that was after the book.
Yeah,
and that character.
Yeah,
And then some other band in like Texas or something had the name, and they're like, "You gotta change your band."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're like, "Okay, whatever." And then I don't know who actually came up with "Beneath This Ashen Sky," but that stuck.
Yeah.
And we used it. And then that band, like, it just slowly, it kind of just, whatever reasons, I think mostly because, like, Colin and Dan were going to college.
Yeah.
And I thought that had a big thing to do with it. So so the band just kind of fell apart. And then, like, me and Ty had some scuff. We had our own issues.
Right.
And we didn't talk for a year.
Yeah.
And I was really bitter about it because I was just like, me and Ty wrote a lot of the stuff.
Right. Well, and to preface all that too, that band was getting pretty big, like to the point, like at least locally, every show was like maxed out. And then weren't you guys getting like label bites or interest or like?
I don't remember the label. That's what we were trying to go for.
Yeah.
But we were playing bigger things because we did that pig stock thing.
Yeah,
we got to play with
like big metal fest.
You know, like Atreyu. And you know, Devil Driver and As I Lay Dying.
Yep.
And you know, we started going to those things and doing stuff like that. And then the band kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And I stopped talking to Ty and all this stuff. So then I was like, oh, I don't know what kind of music, you know, I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But like, I wasn't writing metal anymore. I was writing more, just like using like crazy full chords, but I was still doing riffing.
Yeah.
You know, I just wasn't like just,
more melodic,
you know, doing this crazy chugging stuff. I was doing chugging in a way with these full chords to make it, you know, just, it was more pretty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then, me and Ty started talking again, and like literally a day after we started talking, we started playing music again. Like, and we literally wrote like 4 Flowers.
Yeah.
We pretty much wrote that EP.
Yeah.
The first that Flowers EP, just us in his room.
Yeah.
And then, our first drummer was Steve Hermantis.
Yep.
And the first bass player was Jeremy Lewis. And we didn't. So, and then like Ty was singing.
Yeah.
So that was the first Flowers experience.
And you guys recorded with Daniel?
Yeah, we did. We recorded
with the homie?
Yeah, Daniel Good in Chicago.
Like in his apartment, I think.
Yeah,
like
that was awesome too.
Yeah. I remember it sounded really good too. Like you got it to sound really good. The drums sounded really full.
Yeah. Stevie is a great drummer, and actually he lives down the street from me now.
That's right.
So, yeah, that was really good. And then Stevie had to leave the band because he had his own thing going on that he was doing.
Yeah.
And he was playing in the church and youth group stuff. And Jeremy just kind of like, he just kind of stopped playing with us. Like, he just stopped kind of showing up to shows.
Yeah.
And I love Jeremy.
Yeah.
I still, like, Jeremy's a great guy.
Yeah.
But then, like, the band kind of fell apart again.
Yeah.
And me and Ty, you know, it was nothing between me and him.
Yeah.
But then I remember, like, when we first started the band, I didn't want Mark to be in the band.
Yeah.
Because I knew Ty and Mark, just the way that their personalities are, that it always starts off good, but then it would be like, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that again. I want to do something different.
Yeah.
And so then, like, Ty kind of tricked me into having Mark try out for the band, and I remember, and when Mark first tried out for the band, he wanted to be the singer.
Oh, just the singer.
Yeah, and that didn't work, and then, like, the band kind of fell apart, and then we got on this, like, Bodog Battle of the Band thing.
Oh, yeah.
That Bodog band, and, like, we played, like, one showcase or we did something, and we got the call back, but at this time, we didn't have a drummer, nor did we have a bass player. So we're like, well, we got to do this because and I
Yeah.
forget what exactly. I think we were gonna win some money or like
Yeah.
some kind of recording contract or
Yeah, yeah.
studio time. Or,
Yeah.
And we made it to the second round, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, Ty's like, well, we need a drummer, and we know Mark, and I'm like, okay. And so then like, and we knew James, and
Yeah.
James was always a really good friend of
Yeah.
everybody in the band, and he was always at the band practices. So
Yeah.
that's how James joined Flowers,
Yeah.
and then that's how Flowers became Flowers
Yeah.
because we just kind of started playing on a whim of, oh, we might win this, and we were all kind of done with it at that
Yeah.
point. But at the same time, we're like, oh wait, that kind of like reignited
Yeah,
the fire
yeah.
of being like, oh, we're gonna play this, and
Did you guys win that?
no, we did not win. I mean, we made it to the second round, and we didn't even play tight.
Yeah.
You know, we just. I think we.
Where was it?
It was downtown at one of the smaller venues. I'm not
Like Elbow Room or Double
something.
Door?
It was
or-
something like that. It could have been the Elbow Room. The guys are gonna probably listen to this and be like, "What? You know?" I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was that long ago, so it was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
It didn't matter
Yeah,
to me
yeah,
at that time
yeah.
because it wasn't anything special. I was like, okay, well, we're gonna
Right.
do this, and by the time we played the first song, I was like, we're not gonna win this because
Yeah.
we're just like not tight.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But then after that, we just continued to play,
Yeah.
and we had all these songs, and then we took it seriously, and
Yeah.
we started playing like 150 shows a year.
Yeah.
And that's when you guys were touring in,
Yep.
in D-Man, so
Yep.
it was like, all right, well, and then we started playing all these shows with you guys,
Yep.
and then, like, there were so many awesome bands. It's like
Yeah.
playing at the same time, so it was like we, like, just jumped onto that scene again,
Yeah.
and being like, it's like being pushed right back into it again. It was like, oh, okay, it was good to be
Yeah.
back into something like that, and then, but on a bigger level of playing the Chicago venues
Yep.
and the
Yep.
Metro
Yep.
and like House of Blues and doing
Yep.
all that stuff. So that was like, that was cool.
The Bodog thing actually made it. It kicked a memory back in my head from Above Suspicion days, which I'm surprised, or we can just jump back into. But it's funny because you said it was a Battle of the Bands thing. So I don't know if you remember. Our first show was the Metro.
Yeah.
and it was one of those sell tickets and play
Yeah.
and do that stuff. And it was us and a bunch of other bands. Milkman's Kid played from our neck of the woods. White Chocolate was
Before Today
was a big
Today.
band in that area. White Chocolate was like this big hip hop band that, I mean, we just saw play there and we're like, what is going on with this band? Like, it was just one of those like all day long Battle of the Bands things. And yeah, so Above Suspicion's first show was the Metro.
Yep.
And we got a video of it, like a VHS or something, because we did it.
Dude,
And like,
the best part of that video, if Jim has it or if you have it,
I do not have it.
when he was playing, and I remember seeing one of the bands, I forget what band it was, but the guy was like he looked like Joe Satriani. He played an Ibanez,
yeah.
and he had a bald head, and
Yeah.
he was just shredding, and he was just like, I remember him just like walking on his knees and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, that guy can shred.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing Jim, like he's wearing this t-shirt,
Yeah.
but over the t-shirt he's wearing one of those v-neck pullover like
Yeah,
sweaters
yeah, yeah.
with his backwards hat and his
Yeah.
purple hair, and I
Yeah.
just remember him like playing and like being really like weird about it and like getting on his knees for a second to walk, and I'm like, what are you
I think
doing?
he tripped on a cable and landed on his knees and then kept it going. Yeah. But that's just even thinking about those, like at that time, like two of the big things that were going on were like playing at whatever Village Hall, Moose Lodge,
Yeah.
VFW kind of places, and also these like pay to play Battle of the Bands
Oh
things,
my
which was
gosh.
such a fucking racket. Like make these kids go out and hustle and sell
Oh my
tickets
gosh.
for $10-15 a ticket. And then, you'll be, if you win or if you place, you'll get some recording time or
Yeah.
something. And like, but I mean, there's some of these shows were like 30-40 bands long. Like,
Yeah, it was retarded, like how long it was.
Yeah,
It was just
it's
like,
all day
okay,
long.
it's an all day thing, and it's
Yeah.
like almost like you're going to a sports event, like
Yeah.
a tournament, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I gotta, okay,
right.
gotta
And
watch
then,
these
right.
guys.
Well, and if you play early, you got to stay to hang out to like hear
Yeah.
how you placed. And I don't know what we placed, but we placed well enough to get recording time. Like, it must have been like top 10 bands or something. Get recording time.
We got something.
I think we got, something popped in my mind where we got 9th place maybe. So maybe it's like top 10 bands get recording time.
Yeah, we got like 2 hours.
Yeah,
like in the studio.
And we recorded. I have no idea where we recorded, but I remember recording some guy's basement, and that was the EP that we put out.
That was. No, well, didn't we win something else too? We won, so like we did that EP, and I remember playing. My guitar sounded like garbage because I was playing it on my dad's bass amp.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I recorded one whole song in drop D because I was writing all this metal stuff, and I didn't even like check my tuning or anything, and I remember playing and being like, din, 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 dun, 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 dun. And we recorded it and we kept it.
Yeah. You only had 2 hours. We had to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, but like the power chords sound like garbage.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what is that? Why does it sound bad? Oh, we'll just turn that down. Like, so I virtually wasn't on that song until.
But remember, we recorded in some guy's basement. I had like big pit stains on his shirt, and like we just recorded like 5 or 6 songs, and that was the thing that we, sold or passed around. But when you said the Bodog thing, it just made me think of like, oh yeah, like the whole start of our band was a Battle of the Bands thing, and like that was how we recorded anything.
Well, and like that's what that felt like. That Bodog thing is like you had to sell these things, and I think at that point we were like, whatever, we're just gonna put the money up,
right?
It's like I'm done hustling.
Yeah,
like like being in a band is such a hustle, and like
already, yeah.
What people don't understand is when you're starting out and doing all of it, it's such a big hustle, and people think once you make it, the hustle's over.
Right. No.
The hustle just gets crazier.
It just begins.
It just gets crazier. It's like, all right, well, those were the stepping stones and the building blocks for you to learn. So it's like when you're doing it professionally, it's like
it's a whole new hustle.
You're like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? It's like, and I hated that part of it. It's like. So, like, in Flowers, I was like, all right, well, I'm making the merch because I had the silkscreen machine because Slap Ass, it got to that point where I'm like, I'm not paying for it to be made. I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was my job.
Yeah.
And then everybody else had something else.
Sure.
Like, well, you have to book the shows. And you got to get the van. And so, and that was like Mark's thing was like when we were getting ready to tour.
Yeah.
He had to go get a van. So, like, I remember him, like, training his car in to get this van, and the van was, like, it was all right. It got us places, but it was breaking and, all that touring stuff.
Yeah. Well, and so Flowers for Dorian, again, that was another band, like, I think it must have been the chemistry of either just you and Ty or the 4 of you guys, but, like, I feel like each band you were in had some kind of like buzz to it, like fairly early on, and it was because you guys were writing good songs and playing them well. But it also was just another thing of like, this feels like this band could have something big happen to them, and then so we started playing a bunch of shows locally and things, and then once we played the Metro once. We played the Metro I think 3 times, and the second show, the list each time they let us put together the band list, and it was like us, you guys. White Tie Affair, which was a favor to a friend. We didn't really want them to play.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about those guys.
So that was.
But they were big though. They had like a good following.
So they were on Epic Records, and that was before we signed to Vagrant. Epic was coming around, and so the guys that we knew at Epic were like, "Oh, like this band is going to be a big band, and like if you could get them on the show," and so we did it as a favor to them. But I was trying to think of who else played it. It was us, you guys, them. That might have been the show that Tall Tale played too, which was Tracy and Trish's band. So I was and some other. I think it was 5 bands long, but like it got to a point too again where there was like you guys were playing and getting big crowds, and we were like, what something's going to happen with them, and then the MTV thing happened. What happens with all that?
That was crazy too because I had just started working. I just started tinting windows.
Yeah.
And I started working, and we were doing all this stuff, and my boss was like, "Oh, he's in a band, he's playing these shows," and then all of a sudden, I think Ty and Mark were like all about pushing that, and they were the ones that got us in on all that, and they signed us up, and they did all that.
And it was
stuff.
just like a bunch, like just put in a song and
and people
profile.
voted, and you made a profile, and people voted on it, and we got like 77,000 votes or something like that in like 72 hours or something like that, or 24 hours, and it was just like nuts.
Yeah,
and we didn't even win.
Yeah,
we got like second place. They just picked us because they liked us. Better. Like, and I was like, holy shit! Like, all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you won. We're gonna fly you out, and it was like 3 days notice, and I was like, shit. Okay, this is happening. I'm doing it. So I remember going into work the next day being like, hey, so I gotta go to New York in like 3 days. Our band won this thing, and we're gonna be on MTV, and MTV's putting us up at a 5-star hotel in Times Square, and he's like looking at me like I'm just full of so much shit, like he could smell it. And I'm like looking at him, I'm like, no, honestly. And I remember being like, if you gotta fire me, okay, go ahead, but I have to do this. I'm young. I'm in a I've been playing music forever, and and forever at that time was just ever since you could pick the guitar up. And he got so mad at me, and then I remember just walking out because he was so mad, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't have a job. I guess when I get back, I'm gonna have to find a new job or whatever. And the next day, I came back, and he's like, he called my father, and he called my dad, and he's like, hey, is what Matt's telling me, is this like true? Like, and my dad's like, yeah, it's true. He's going to New York, and he's doing this, and they won this huge thing, and from that, I think it just like went up from there. Just like we started playing more city shows, and
And what was the idea behind that contest? It was just win and then come out to New York?
Yeah, so they win. We won, and they pretty much played us. They put us behind a green.
Oh, but there was no awards around that time.
Yeah, it was the MTV VMAs. And they were going to play us during like a commercial, but it was only in Chicago, through Comcast.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. And I didn't have Comcast, and I had a big party. Everybody in the band was having a big party, and I had a huge party at my house. Ty was having a huge party, but we had AT&T. We did not have Comcast, or we had a dish. So I had this huge party, and we were watching the whole VMAs, and we're like, well, what the heck? They're not playing us. They're like, whatever. And everybody's like, whoa. And then all of a sudden I start getting phone calls at home. Like, hey, Matt, we just saw you and your band on TV. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I'm like, I got all these people here. And they're like, oh, you gotta have Comcast. I'm like, motherfucker.
So that the whole idea was like, it was the VMAs are going on. Winner of the battle or of the contest gets to go out to New York, and then they'll play you during the VMAs. But when you out to New York, like what?
So when we went out to New York, what they did was like they had like a regiment of what we were doing. So it's like we checked into the hotel. All we had to do was bring our guitars out. We told them what amps and everything we wanted to play. And we were just playing live in this like crazy green screen room, and like two camera guys are just filming us, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And we're just it's like playing like a live practice for like 2.5 hours. Just like you're playing a show, and I brought like extra shirts and stuff because I was sweating through them, and it's like we had the Moon Man behind us, and that guy's heavy. That thing is so heavy. So and we're doing that, and they were doing interviews. Like we went down to the east, like the Lower East Side or something like that in New York, and they were just doing interviews. And then they gave us all like $100 gift cards to go spend in Times Square. Everybody got their girlfriends a gift. We're like, oh, okay, cool. And then we came back, and we're like, oh wow. So it was more of like you win, you get this publicity for you. And I mean, stuff came from it. And it just boosted all of our it boosted us. Lit a fire under our ass even more, and we just started doing it hard, and we played as many shows, did the whole radio stuff. Like everything is like. My boss was like, man, you got to get off early today. I'm like, I got to go at like this time because I got to be at the Beat Kitchen in like 45 minutes, and I gotta go back to Lake Zurich to help the guys load back up, and we were always late. We were that band that was always late.
Yeah.
And the Beat Kitchen hated us for it. But that was my favorite place to play because it was small.
Yeah, the Beat Kitchen is good.
It was small, but like you could still fit a ton of people in there, and you could and the sound system was awesome.
Yeah.
So it was like you got to shred. So it's like, and they had good food. So it's
I was just gonna say they have good food there too.
And I'll still go there now. Like I'm like, oh, the Beat Kitchen, let's go.
Yeah,
burger. But yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, and during especially during that time when you guys won that contest, I remember just in my head thinking like, oh, this is it. Like they won an MTV contest, so they're off and running, and they're gonna get some really huge shit from it.
Well, and from them, actually, it was because of you too, because then we got hooked up with Red Bull.
Right. So at the time when we were doing all the label stuff, we had met contacts from like, I don't know, just however many different labels, and just a lot of them were just like, hi, nice to meet you, and then that was the last we ever heard of them. But we met Meredith Chin, who at the time was working for Warner Brothers, and I think maybe Sire or some offshoot of it. And then at some point she went off to Red Bull, and I had been kind of like emailing her once every few months, just checking in with her, and my big thing was like, I always wanted to have a record label, because I was like, when you're on tour, or when you're in a band, you're like, here's all these bands who aren't signed. Fucking sign this band. And it's like, I wish I had this money so I could sign these bands and put out these albums.
Yeah.
And so I remember there's at some point an email where she would be like, hey, send me a list of bands that you like again. And I sent her this list of like, it was like over like 4 or 5 emails, and each email was like 10 bands. And I remember I put you guys on one of the lists, and then she was like, oh, Flowers, I dig this. And I was like, yeah, cool. And here's their, like, these are some of my best buds, one especially. Here's their contact info. And then at some point, I'm sure we had a conversation over, but at some point you guys just were like getting into Red Bull Records shit. Like,
oh, yeah.
Especially because that was a very new thing, Red Bull Records at the time.
They were coming out to like, she came out to Clearwater.
Yeah. Which is not easy to get to.
No.
Especially if you're flying from another place and like getting your ass around.
Let's go to West Dundee.
Yeah,
so she came to a Clearwater show. I think that was the first time she saw us. And then she came to I believe a Metro show.
Probably, yeah.
And then someone came out to, when we played the House of Blues with, what the heck? They just played Side Outs. What was that?
Oh, Lucky Boys.
Yeah, when we played with Lucky Boys and the Frantic.
Yep.
And they came out, and we met her boss.
Yeah.
And then we were on our second tour. It was our fall tour.
Yeah.
And we're on tour, and our cars were breaking down. Mark was in the hospital because he was having some issues. I believe he had like an ulcer or something like that. And he had to go to the hospital, and we had to cancel the show. And we were like, man, this tour is just kind of like, it just wasn't. And at that point too, we were also talking to Meredith, and they're like, hey, we got this new studio at the Red Bull, the Red Bull headquarters in Santa Monica. And I'm like, oh. And they wanted us to like, come out there.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, no, if you guys aren't paying for it, we're not going to go out there.
Yeah.
And they're like going back and forth with us. They're like, oh, well, it turned into like, oh, you need to come out here, and then it got to, put a budget together. And that was like, we're bringing our guitars.
Yeah.
We're going to fly out there, and this is the equipment we want to rent while we're in the studio for the 6 to 7 days that we were, and then they're like, okay, cool. So then we went down to Red Bull, and we recorded, and like every day we were going into LA to pick up either our amps or going to Burbank to pick up Mark's drums, and we're meeting all these people. And I remember this distinctly. We were like returning Mark's drums. Yeah. Like we were done. And you could just hear this band just shredding, just ripping. You just hear these guitars. You're like, oh, man. We're like, yeah, man, who's playing?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, the guy's like, oh, man, it's Thin Lizzy's playing. You want to go check him out? I'm like, yeah. but we gotta go. Like, and you just hear the dueling guitars like harmonizing. And you're like, oh, we could be watching Thin Lizzy right now. It's like, what are the odds?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's like that stuff was really cool.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I forgot about. Like, I know that you guys had hooked up with them, but I forgot that you got flown out there and record. What happened with what you recorded for them?
Well, we were pretty much putting together a full-length album.
Yeah.
Because we only had that EP, and, like, we had been recording, and they put us into... we had all these other demo songs that we were doing that they actually funded, and we they had us put together, just everything, and be like, okay, yeah, you want to use this person, and we were using Nick Baumhart was the guy who did our EP, and we wanted to use him on the full length, but we were using this other guy's that worked through Red Bull, Eric Stedman, and we liked what he was doing, but we really wanted Nick to be a part of it. But like, we had maybe like 3-4 songs with Nick that we'd done that Red Bull funded. Okay. And then they're like, hey, come out to Santa Monica. And we're like, okay. So then we recorded like another 4 or 5 songs. And we were getting ready to do that. And that's like really after we got back from Santa Monica, that's really when like the band kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And it was just like, really? Life's got to happen to everybody at the same time. And it was just like, I knew exactly that, like, if I was going to do it, everybody had to be on the same page, and not everybody was on the same page at all. And the band fell apart just because it wasn't for anybody in particular. It was just everybody was kind of doing their own thing, and just, it sucked.
I always looked at you as like the glue to that band, like, because who. And the rest of the band was on whose side about what issue was like you were kind of in the middle, like if you weren't in, then it was like then the wheels were going to come off because you had to hold that together.
Well, and that's really kind of what happened was like it got to a point where I was like trying to be the glue still, and it was just like I was getting fed up with it. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm listening to everybody's sides here, and I was just kind of like, okay, well, I'm done too. If everybody else is done, I'm done. And I think after that point, I was like, I'm not going to put my future in anybody else's hands. Yeah. Again, especially after that one, it was just like one of those. Oh man, this is like it was such a good movement that we were doing because like, I mean, I loved playing live. And I loved like just.
And you could tell too when anyone would watch you and I'd watch it was like this guy is like he is like for this 30 minutes like he is fully there. He's not some bands you watch are just like phoning it in. Like you were there and you were giving it.
Well, and that's how everybody in the band was too. It's like there was like, I mean, whatever problems we were having at the time, like by the time we got on stage, it was kind of forgot about. Until you were done and unplugged, and everybody's like, "I fucking hate you, I hate you." And it's like, oh,
which is a funny, it's a funny thing for some bands. That is a thing of like some bands are very, everyone's happy-dory and everything, and that's fine. But some bands are like, there's some shit going on behind closed doors, but when we go on stage, that's not an issue. Like, we still know how to lock in and be good. But then when that's done, we still have this shit to do. It's like a couple who's in turmoil. When you go out in public, they're like, oh, they look great. What's wrong? And then behind closed doors, they're fucking ripping each other's heads off. So that is a band dynamic that happens. You just kind of assume that everything's fine, but it's like, no, these are also people who are around each other all the time. It's like brothers or sisters.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, too. It's like, a lot of people don't realize, it's like, it's just like, oh, man, well, I don't want to, it's like having a girlfriend's really hard to have in a band when you're touring. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like, you're dating 3 other dudes, and you gotta, like, try to, like, keep, it got to that point where it was just like, you wanted to hear everybody's sides, but at the same time, you're just like, how am I going to do this? Or how are you going to, like, get these guys to work together again? Or how am I going to work with them? Or, it's like...
Well, at a certain point, too, it's supposed to be fun, and if, like, you're in the middle, like, mediating all this stuff, it starts to take the fun out of it. But what totally makes sense to me is the line that you said, which was, you didn't want your fate to be in anyone else's hands anymore, which... totally makes sense for you to then get pushed even more so into Slap Ass Creations, like full-time, this is what you want to do, even though you had been doing it for a while, like really taking the reins in on that.
And that was like the big thing too, is like, because I remember having a conversation with Mark on tour, and I remember we were in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, and Mark's just like, you would pick your company over the band. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you would. And I had to like step back and think about it. I'm like, well, yeah, I would, but like without like not a crappy reason,
right?
You know, but like when the shit hit the fan, I was like, fuck this, man. I'm gonna do this because I haven't, you know, like I was touring and I was bringing it on tour with me, and I only had so much stuff to bring, and it was just kind of like on the back burner,
right?
Kind of half-ass, and I'm like, and I think when Flowers broke up, that was really when I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and this is how I'm gonna do it, and I've been kind of doing both, but now I'm going to do this.
Right.
And that's really when the company kind of got bigger. Yeah. You know, and I mean, the local scene really helped it. Because bands would wear the stuff. My friends were there, and people were like, oh, you know, they would automatically associate, like, oh, that's Flowers merch. Yeah. You know, and people would be
So it's probably a good thing, too, that you were able to separate yourself from that.
Yeah.
And like I said, you had already been doing it for years and years, just kind of on the side. But then this was the time that, like, okay, you have nothing in your way, you have nothing holding you back. Like, this is time for you to like fully immerse yourself in this shit. And that was a big boost into it. And that's when I could tell, even on my own side, like this was like a business now. It wasn't like a thing to do to make a little side cash. This was like your career now. And since then, I mean, going from being in bands and just kind of being a part of something, and then now going to something that this is your thing. I mean, it's a big change to go through. Like, and not only that, like this is like here in a band you can rely on 3 or 4 other people. Like, oh, if I don't do it, they'll do it. But this is like, no, if you don't do it, it's not getting done.
Well, and that was my exact attitude when I did it. I was like, you know, right when I was like, oh, the band didn't work out. Well, that wasn't me, because I really tried to keep that band together. But when I got to the point where it was no longer in my hands, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, and if I fail at this, I have no one else to, because I'm doing everything from the artwork to making it to pushing it, promoting it. If I don't make it, that is entirely on me, and I can't blame. And I still believe in that. Right. You know, it's like if I feel like, oh man, this isn't working, it's like, well, you need to push yourself harder. What are you not doing? It's like, well, I'm doing everything.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting about, like, aside from going from having a group of people to rely on to then it's just you, it's not like you just went to another band. This is like it's a business. It's your business. And while music is still involved in the way that like a lot of your art and a lot of the work is like you can tell is influenced by music, this is the whole other, if there's a pie chart of your life, music was just this one slice. The whole other part was skateboarding. Since I've known you've always skateboarded. Also just being an artist. So like it's funny too, because I'm sure people were like, for some people it was like, oh, this absolutely makes sense, but some people are like, oh, I didn't even know this was like a part of your life. But it's like, oh, well, if you would have known him, you would have seen this coming a mile away. Like this was just waiting to happen.
Well, that's funny too. It's because like the last couple girlfriends that I've had were like, they had no idea about the music side, right? You know, or they knew that's what I did, but they like never saw me play live, right? Or did they ever like, you know, see me like really play the guitar much, or like pick it up and be like, yeah, check this out, you know? But like they just knew the art and like what I was pushing and stuff, and it's like, but I've always had music, and I'm always. And that's another thing too, is like that was always very personal to me. Music still is very personal, and like I share music to people that love music. Right. That like people are like, oh, like I share music with you all the time just because we grew up playing music. But like I share with my other friends and stuff, but I'm always looking for new music. Yeah.
Anytime. But that stuff kind of funnels back into like back into Slap Ass. And so with Slap Ass, because it covers so much, and there are so many companies out there that you like and even like support that aren't your company, like what do you, when you look at Slap Ass, what is it that you see Slap Ass being like why is it important? Why do you think people should care about it? Why do you think it's a thing that, like, you know, matters in the world, aside from just being unique, having your own, like, artistic style? When you go to these shows and you set up next to these other kind of companies, like, what do you see in that world?
That's a really good question, because, like, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I've always thought of it like, well, the reason I'm making this stuff is because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, and I if I'm making something, it's because something inspired me to do it, but I'm always making stuff, so it's like, you know, I go through a sketchbook a year, and I don't even use all the designs, and I go through them, I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to use that, but, like anybody that, like, stands out, that was a weird thing, is when I went to, like C2E2, like Chicago Comic-Con this year, that was the first time we'd ever done something that big, and I had, like, a bunch of my friends come out, and they were all a part of it, and I remember going up there and being, like, kind of intimidated. Yeah. You know, like, oh, well, what am I compared to everybody else? Right. You know? But then, like...
It's like a Battle of the Bands.
Yeah, that is really what it is, but I didn't have to sell the tickets. Right, you know, I paid my way for the booth, and I just remember looking at my whole setup and just being like, well, this is me. This is what I do. Like, this is just, like, an accumulation of, like, everything that I am. Like, you know, metal, horror movies, just cartoons, just skateboarding. Any of that stuff, that's what made the company what it was, or what it is. And I just remember saying something like, oh, man, I said it to Ty, and Ty came with and helped run and sell and stuff, and I was just like, oh man, like, I'm really selling with the big dogs now. And Ty, like, stopped and, like, looked at me. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, you are the big dog here, because, like, we had so many people. I mean, our booth was just like, I mean, like, you know, you have the people that walk by and they're like, you know, like, we had people walk by, and if they didn't like it, they just kept walking. But, like, the people that liked it loved it. So it wasn't like that. The people that walked by were like, oh, this is kind of cool. They were like, this stuff is great. Oh my gosh, let me buy a couple shirts, and here, have some stickers. And, you know, so, like, it was like this, like, really cool time, and it was, like, very much my niche. You know, I found my niche of, like, well, I gotta start doing these more, and I gotta start doing all this. And I just remember talking to the guy who booked me for the thing, for C2E2, and he was like, and I'd asked him, like, hey man, do you guys do any other, are you associated with San Diego for Comic-Con out there? He's like, no, we're not associated with them, but we do New York and Seattle. I'm like, well, what's the next one? And he's like, well, New York's in October, you know, and it's March. And I'm like, okay. And he told me that, like, the first day. And I had no idea how I was going to sell. I had no idea what we were going to do. And, like, and every day he came and checked on us. And at the end of on Sunday, I just remember just being like, I mean, by day 2, the whole trip was paid for by day 2. So day 3 was all just profit, and that was the busiest day for us. And it was just slammed. And I just remember my friends that all came out that they were just like, I'm like, hey man, what's going on? Oh, and I'm pulling shirts, or I'm talking to somebody. And I just remember being like, okay, after that day, I'm like, all right, Josh, fax me over those, the applications for New York, because I'm going to do New York. You know, and that's way bigger, because Chicago last year was like 60,000 people. And I think this year was like 70 or 80. New York last year was 160,000. That was last year. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and it's an extra day. So Chicago Comic-Con was 3 days, and this is 4 days. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I remember
125,000 people or something, 130,000 people.
And I just remember being like, I signed the papers, and I'd, like, signed the check over. And I'm like, oh man, that's expensive, because it was like, you know, like Comic-Con was like $1,300. You know, I'm like, oh okay. This one was like $1,900. Not on top of, you know,
getting your asses there.
Well, and we drove, and we're gonna drive down there. And the hotel was like $2,000, because we're staying in Manhattan for 6 days, you know, 5-6 days. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But then I'm like, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well.
Yeah. You
well,
pay money to
you
make
better
money.
make sure that you have enough stuff because
Yeah.
it's going to sell. So
Well, that like how with this podcast, I like to get into stuff about bands that people don't know about. With owning a company like you do, that's the kind of stuff that probably people don't like really think about, because if you go to a C2E2, you're like, oh, I go there and I walk by a booth and whatever.
Yeah.
But like that booth, it took them this much money,
Yeah.
this much run up time to prep all the
Yeah.
gear. Like it's a fucking
and they're
it's
selling
like a band.
too.
It's a hustle.
Yeah,
It's a
it is.
fucking
It is a
hustle.
major hustle. And
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, people were asking me like, how was it in Chicago? I'm like, well, we killed it.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wow. Like, I was just really taken back by
Right.
like, oh, because I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And I've been doing like shows and stuff, and this was like the first big show where I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the area and the venues that I would be doing, because I want to do a cartoon show,
Yep.
and it's like these comics, cartoons, movies, like,
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of awesome artists, like, if you've never been to a Comic-Con,
Yeah.
it's not just comics.
Right.
I mean, you go there is like just amazing artists
Yeah.
everywhere. Like they just have a whole section called Artist Alley, and they have smaller booths. Like they get like a table,
Yeah.
and they're just selling the prints and like doodles and,
Yeah.
and all. But like, there's so many awesome artists out there. But then you get into the booth areas, and all of a sudden you got these huge booths, like
Yeah.
with guys just doing their own thing, the same thing that I'm doing, just it's their niche. And
Right.
this is what I'm doing, so it's like, holy moly.
So for now, so now your path has been, even from the beginning, it's been playing guitar and creating art, and then for a long time it was more so focused on the music side, with the art kind of like, if it was
Yeah.
like 70-30 or 80-20.
Yeah.
Now it's flipped the other way, where the art and the company is like completely your focus.
Yeah.
But music kind of influences it and like kind of
Mm-hmm.
supports it in like in a more inadvertent way.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've gotten to this point, what do you kind of see or hope for Slap Ass in the next, 5 or so years? Or what are things you're looking forward to? You said New York's coming up, so you're getting excited and like ramping up for that.
well-
Like, what are other kinds of things you want to do with Slap Ass that maybe you haven't done yet?
Well, I definitely want to be doing this full time.
Yeah.
Because I work.
Yeah.
I work full time, and
Yeah.
like people are like that we see like our friends or something
Yeah.
when we go to the bar, and they're like, "Wow, Slap Ass is getting so big." It's like, oh, it's like, and then I start talking to them like, "Oh yeah, well I still tint windows." They're like, "What?
Yeah.
Wait, what? You still work?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, it's like." It's my time
Yeah.
is like very limited
Yep.
to what I do,
Mhm.
so it's like, yeah,
It's a
no,
hustle.
I'm a pretty busy dude, so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I want to do that full time. I want to just like do more of these big shows,
Yeah.
and then just I want to make a cartoon show.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it for years,
Yep.
so it's like,
So
what are we doing next?
You're at the very least, it's never like you feel like, oh, this is what it is, and I'm fine with it. Like you
Yeah.
want to do bigger
Yeah.
things with it and
Mhm.
get to a point where it is supporting you full time.
Mhm.
And that's a part of this. Another thing, you kind of just assume, oh, that's a company, oh, that's a band, that's what they do all the time. I mean, a lot of the bands, they're living at home with their parents, so they don't have
Yeah.
overhead. Like a lot of these companies, like they got to work a whole other job just to support that company. So when people say like, shop local, support these little companies, you kind of just think, oh yeah, that's fine, whatever. But like, there's a reason that people are trying to do that, because those companies, those bands are trying to get out of the circumstances they're in to get to the next one.
Yeah,
So like,
it's a hustle, man,
Yeah.
and that it's like, I mean, I learned a lot of my hustling just from being in the band,
Right.
And it's still like, I still treat it as like, oh, I'm selling merch at a show, but I'm not selling. I'm selling
Yeah.
my own merch,
Right.
And this is my show,
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is what I'm doing. So it's like,
it's funny how much being in a band, you get into it to have fun, you get into it to have a good time, but it really shapes the kind of person you end up being later in life. Even if it has nothing to do with music, like you approach whatever job or career with a lot of the same like patience or work ethic or things like that because of, I mean, when you're in a band, you got to hustle. So like you take that elsewhere.
Well, you know, the funny thing is too, is like not a lot of people realize when you are doing something like what I'm doing or being in a band, but like when you're starting a clothing company or trying to be an entrepreneur, like people do it for 2 years and they struggle so hard and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm done with this. Like 2-3 years, I'm done. I didn't go anywhere. I'm just sick of the idea, or they lose their vision of where they want to go, or maybe their vision has changed because it's not a career right yet.
Right.
You know, and like for me, it's like September was our 10 year.
Yeah.
So it was like 10 years of doing Slap Ass, and people are like, wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? I'm like, it doesn't really feel like much.
Right.
And, you know, it's just like, people are like, well, what are your words of advice or something? It's like, just keep doing it. You know, it's like, I'm still doing it, and I'm just getting to that point now where I'm like, I'm starting to make consistent flow of money where it's like web sales and it's always in the back of my van. So it's like, oh, okay, so I'm selling it here. It's always push, push, push. I always have a stack of stickers on me. It's like it's like pushing a band. It's the same hustle. It's like,
it's not 40 hours a week. It's all the time.
It's your brand.
Yeah.
You know, you're building a brand. You hustle. You got to push it. You got to do as much as you can. It's like playing every show you can. It's, what venues am I going to do? Where am I going to sell? How am I going to do this stuff? It's like, what? And I'm doing these art shows, or I'm doing this. And so you try to figure out your niche, and you know, you got these booth fees to pay, and how are you going to make your money before? How much stuff do you have to sell before you break even? And was it worth it?
Yeah,
you know, it's like, and to me, it's always worth it when you meet somebody like as being in a band. Yeah, when you play a show for maybe like 10 people. Yeah. Or 3 people. As long as you got that one person that was like blown away. It was like, holy shit! Like, you guys just were the best thing, and like. That's where it all grows from. It's because the word of mouth spreads faster than, you know, you trying to do stuff, you know? So it's like, it's the same thing. It's a hustle and flow. It's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? So
I've asked previous guests, like, advice that they'd have for people who want to pursue music or being in a band in their life. Now, here's a nice different perspective. If there are people listening who are wanting to start their own side businesses or get things up on Etsy or do things like that, and they like, what would you say to yourself 10 years ago starting Slap Ass? What are any bits of advice or like things to avoid or things to keep in mind in starting a new business?
Well, if you're thinking about doing it and you really want to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. I mean, I got to the point where it was like, when I started, I was like, okay, well, I had to go to a silk screener to get my stuff made, and I did that, and then I got to the point where my dad was like, so do you want to do this? Yeah. Like, because I'll invest in the equipment, and we can do this, and I'm like, yeah, why not? Yeah. You know, and anybody that is going to start their own business, you have to be batshit crazy. I mean, seriously, like crazy to think that like, all right, well, I'm going to do this, and I don't care. I don't care, because it is a struggle. Yeah. I mean, you're like constantly, it's like, and you can't spend that money that you make. Right. You got to put it back in and to get more stuff. And I'm still constantly doing that. Yeah. It's like, people are like, well, how much do you make in a year? I'm like, well, I'd have to ask my accountant. Yeah. and it's to that point now where my accountant's like, the last like 2-3 years, he's like, hey man, you profited. And I'm like, awesome. Yeah. He's like, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he even told me when I first started going through him, he's like, listen, and it's Brian Petratus, by the way, that was also Milkman's Kid, which is now my accountant.
Life is full circle. It's a full circle.
He even told me, he's like, hey, listen, I'm not gonna take any money from you until you're making money. Yeah. And now it was like, this last year was the first time I actually had to pay him. I'm like, hey, what do you want this year? He was like, how about this? And I'm like, okay, finally you're taking money from me, so that makes me feel
Right.
much better about myself.
It's a
But,
good thing. If you're giving him money, it's because you're making money.
Yeah, but I just say just do it, and I mean you learn.
Right.
I mean, along the ways of what you're gonna do. I
Yeah.
mean, business, like I don't have any business schooling under
Yeah.
me. I went to art school
Yeah.
and I dropped out of art school.
Yeah.
Like when I was in art school, I didn't even get to finish.
Yeah.
You know, because I was on academic probation
Yeah.
and I was gonna, not be locked into my tuition. And I was like, you know what? And while I was in there, that's when I made the Slap Ass logo.
Yeah.
It's like we went to Japan for my brother's wedding,
Yeah.
and I told it to my dad and uncle, and they really believed in it. And they're like, I think my uncle's like, you should really do this. And my dad was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you should. So then I came back and I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do this school anymore. And then
Yeah.
that's when I started just working full time, and that's when I started working with you.
At the warehouse.
Yeah, I started
Yeah,
working
yeah.
with you, and that's you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Like that would be, just don't stop, and whatever is going to come in your way, there's going to be so many things coming your way that are going to discourage you,
Yeah.
make you want to quit, make you just think to yourself, hey, why am I doing this? This is
Yeah.
retarded. I can't handle this, and why am I gonna? Yeah, man, you can't think about that crap.
Yeah.
You just like think about your goal, think about what you're gonna do it, and then think about what you want to come from that once you've achieved that goal.
Yeah.
Because like I have goals, and they're everyday goals.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I've achieved it.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, well, I've achieved this goal, so I can achieve this goal to
Yeah.
get to this goal. So it's like,
Just always be hustling, always be
yeah,
moving.
you can't stop. You can't be lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
can't
true.
be lazy, and you always gotta just do it.
Just
like,
fucking
it's-
do it.
Just fucking do it.
All right, we've been talking for a while now, and it's getting late. You got to work tomorrow, but we'll end on a nice little light note of bringing it back to music. What's an album or what's a band that you're really into now, or something that you've been playing lately?
Oh, I've been really big into Tesseract's new album. I think it's Polaris.
Okay.
Is their last album. I've been really into, and Fallujah's new album
Yeah.
is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah. anything metal,
Yeah.
I've been like, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Metal has definitely come back to where it needs to be, if not better.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
for a while there, that whole hardcore thing was like, we're gonna play breakdowns. We're gonna chug it to your mama. You know, it's like, all right, man. Like,
Don't chug it to my mama.
Don't chug it to my mama. I want to hear some ripping solos.
Yeah,
and then, that finally came back. So, but yeah, I mean, other albums. There's so many.
Yeah.
So many. Era. The Era. It's a band, Era.
Yeah.
The Augment album I really been into too.
Okay.
That's like really. It's really good.
I'll have to check out all three of those things.
Yep.
Well, good, man. Good, like hour and a half-ish chat. And it's hot in this room, and
Yeah.
you got to go to bed to go to work tomorrow and eat some pizza on the way.
Yes.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for doing my first in-person podcast interview / with one of my longtime best friends, also best man at my wedding.com.
Is that real?
is the internet real? Is .com real?
No, that line right there. My best friend, bestman.com. I think we
I'll
should
look
make
into it.
that.
Yeah. We'll look into it.
We'll make that a TV show.
Oh, good. Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.